House of Representatives diplomatic missions of, in Thailand passport visa requirements visa policy. The Prime Minister of Thailand is the head of government of Thailand. The Prime Minister is also the chair of the Cabinet of Thailand. The post has existed since the Revolution of 1932, when the country became a constitutional monarchy. Prior to the coup d'état, the Prime Minister was nominated by a vote in the Thai House of Representatives by a simple majority, and is then appointed and sworn in by the King of Thailand. The House's selection is usually based on the fact that either the Prime Minister is the leader of the largest political party in the lower house or the leader of the largest coalition of parties. In accordance with the Constitution, the Prime Minister can only be appointed twice and is therefore limited to a maximum of 2 consecutive terms. The post of Prime Minister is currently held by retired General Prayut Chan-o-cha. Since the coup d'état on the 22nd of May 2014, the office of the President of the People's Committee, later changed to Prime Minister of Siam, was first created in the temporary constitution of 1932. The office was modelled after the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. As Siam became a parliamentary democracy in 1932 after a bloodless revolution. However, the idea of a separate head of government in Thailand is not new. Prior to 1932, Thailand was ruled by absolute monarchs, who acted as both the head of state and the government. However, during the middle and latter reigns of the Chakri dynasty, several individuals were perceived to hold a post equivalent to a head of government. During the reign of King Mongkut, Somde Chao Prayasi Suryavans had a very significant role in an otherwise absolutist system. During the reign of King Chulalongkorn, Prince Damrong Rajanubhab took over this role. In fact, the office most considered the precursor of that of the Prime Minister was the ancient office of Samuhanayok, which was run by an Akhra Mahasena Bodhi or Chief Minister in charge of civilian affairs. The first Prime Minister of Siam was Praya Manopakon Nititada, a judge. The title of the office was changed from Prime Minister of Siam to Prime Minister of Thailand in 1945 and then permanently with the renaming of Siam to Thailand in 1949. For most of its existence the office has been occupied by army leaders. 16 out of 29. Including the incumbent General Prayut Chan-o-cha. Military dominance began with the country's second Prime Minister, Fort Phornyotham, who ousted his civilian predecessor in a coup in 1933. The longest-serving Prime Minister was Field Marshal Plak Pibul Songram at 14 years, 11 months, and 18 days. The shortest was Tavi Bunyaket at just 18 days. 9 were removed by coups d'état, 3 were disqualified by court order, and 11 resigned from office. The youngest ever to occupy office was Mr. Seni Pramoj at 40 years old. Thailand received its first female Prime Minister, Yingluck Shinawatra, in 2011. Every Prime Minister since Manopakon Nititada has been Buddhist. The Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Thailand must be a member of the House of Representatives. Therefore, the qualifications for the office of Prime Minister are the same as the qualifications for membership in the House. Prior to the coup d'état, to be appointed, the nominee for the office must have the support of 1/5 of the members of the House of Representatives. Then after a simple majority vote in the House, A resolution will be passed and submitted to the king, who will then make a formal appointment by giving his royal assent to the resolution. This must take place within 30 days after the beginning of the first session of the House of Representatives after an election. If no candidate can be found within this time period, then it is the duty of the President of the National Assembly of Thailand to submit the name considered most worthy for the king to formalize. The nominee and eventual Prime Minister is always the leader of the largest political party in the lower house or the leader of the majority coalition formed after an election. Under the current junta, the nominee for the office is selected by National Legislative Assembly. With the House of Representatives being abolished, the Prime Minister is the de facto chair of the Cabinet of Thailand. The appointment and removal of ministers can only be made with their advice. As the leader of the government, the Prime Minister is therefore ultimately responsible for the failings and performance of their ministers in the government as a whole. The Prime Minister cannot hold office for a consecutive period of more than 8 years. As the most visible member of the government, the Prime Minister represents the country abroad and is the main spokesperson for the government at home. The Prime Minister must, under the Constitution, lead the cabinet in announcing the government's policy statement in Phron.